Welcome back. We're still with Dr. Uche Owalike. Thank you for joining us once again.
And
still on the budget issues, of course, lots of concerns, and I mentioned one of them, which is the PDP, talking about mortgaging the future of Nigeria. But this time around, let me reiterate the words of the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Mr. Udoma, on the budget. He mentioned that it's an infrastructure and job budget. You know, he said we're going to set aside money for social intervention, we're going to recruit teachers, we're going to get loans from market women. This sounds like the usual campaign promises we hear over and over again. And of course, we see maybe nothing significant to show for the promises and even the monies being set aside for them. Now, why do you think this time around Nigerians should confidently look up to the president on this?
Okay, let me even talk on the first issue you mentioned, which is the main opposition party talking about mortgaging the future of Nigerians. You see, that position is because of as I said earlier on, the huge component of debt in the overall budget, and if you come to think of it. Borrowing in itself is not bad. What is bad is when you borrow and you consume, or when you borrow you misapply the
plug it in the wrong places.
Exactly. And Nigeria currently, as we speak, we have, if you like, some sort of borrowing space. The ratio of one of the ways by which we can measure the burden of debt is the ratio of debt to GDP. The ratio of debt to GDP in Nigeria currently stands around 12%. The total debt is about 12 trillion, they tell us, as of September, as $64 billion equivalent. Out of that 12 trillion, 2 trillion is for external, 10 trillion is for domestic. And if you look around the world, if you Google CIA World Facts on debt to GDP ratio, you discover that of Nigeria is among the lowest in the world at 12%. For countries in the same peer group with Nigeria, I think the threshold is around 25 to 30, and we are doing 12%. So we still have some borrowing room, as it were. And what is the total size of our budget even this year? And if you check, $10 billion, $100 billion for the next 10 years will not come from normal budget. So except we borrow this kind of money, especially from multilateral sources, from the World Bank or African Development Bank, which are concessional in nature. They give you loans of upwards of as long as 40 years, give you another moratorium of 10 years with very concessional interest rates. So I think we should take advantage of these opportunities.
Well, you see, my worry here is that this consistent borrowings, it's probably emasculating Nigeria's fiscal plan.
Yes, that's the point I'm making. If you listen to the president when he was talking, he said, for me, that is what is cheering, that this time around we are borrowing to commit to infrastructure. We are borrowing to commit to capital projects. When you borrow and you tie them to specific projects, that's what makes sense. So I think the DMO, the Debt Management Office, is doing a great job managing the country's debt portfolio. So that shouldn't be our worry.
Okay, so over to what the other one, where the lots of promises which sounded very campaign-like. Is it possible?
Yes, we are giving him the benefit of doubt. One day after from now, we can now sit back and reassess and say, how did the budget perform, especially if the baseline assumptions were met. It's a good thing we are. He's talking about plugging revenue leakages, using making sure that, for example, that the treasury single account thing is extended to all the MDAs, making sure too that the integrated personnel and personal information system, the IPPS thing too, is there. We also have the government information financial management system. So all of this, geared towards plugging revenue leakages. There's also this, I'm sure you are aware, there's also this commitment now on the part of government to ensure that MDAs remit, in line with the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2007, remit at least 80% of the operating surpluses to the Treasury. They are also now required not to spend more than 75% of their IGR, and then remit what they are expected to remit. So by the time we plug these leakages, okay, and we expect that the revenue at the disposal of the government will be higher. Another thing too that is of note in 2016 budget is the fact that we are for some time now we are going to have an increase in non-oil revenue sources. I'm talking about sources from the customs, for example, Federal Inland Revenue Service. So we expect that the Federal Inland Revenue Service will generate more revenue this time by way of companies' income tax, the VAT. The good thing is that the VAT is not going to be increased. They're not talking about increasing the rate from 5% to 10%, which was initially provided for in the 2015 budget. It's going to remain the same. But what will be the...
Well, there's been talks about some increase.
Yes, but the president has said no increase will take place in 2016. But what will happen is that, especially in terms of the company's income tax, that the tax net will be broadened. So that many companies that have not been paying tax will be required to pay tax.
But you see, for the first time at least, perhaps more money is being dedicated towards infrastructure rather than security.
There's a huge gap in those sectors, and that's why the money that is being channeled there or proposed to be channeled there is largely justified. So if it's taking the largest chunk, it is for obvious reasons. The next is of course, why is education also taking a large chunk of the budget? You also know that in this 2016 proposed the budget, the government intends to engage about 500,000 graduate teachers, engage teachers. So that is bound to also increase the budget for education. Health too, we expect that our hospitals will be better equipped. So the critical areas are really getting attention. Transport too is one of them. It's also one of the sector that is also getting a large chunk. If you look at our challenges in the area of roads, rail infrastructure and so on. So I think the allocation, in my view, makes a lot of sense.
In your own perspective, the budget is very implementable.
Yes, it is. It is implementable. It's a good working document. What we now wait to see is the process of implementation, and that is where I would suggest that this is the time to activate all budget monitoring mechanisms. The National Assembly has a role to play. They have their oversight functions. The Office of the Auditor General for the Federation, with responsibility to audit accounts. The Ministry of National Planning and the Budget Office, they all have roles to play. But again, it's important to say this. In the past, we used to have this audit alarm committee. Yes. Made up of the the chairman used to be the Auditor General for the Federation. We have the Accountant General as member, a representative of the President. Okay, that kind of committee, a whistleblowing committee, should be reactivated so that if they find that money is not being used for the purpose it is meant, they should be able to blow the whistle.
Say something about it.
And finally, we need a budget monitoring a group that is effective, comprising the organized private sector, the civil society, the media, maybe chaired by, renowned economists. We used to have that kind of thing in the past. Sam Aluko used to chair that kind of thing, the late Sam Aluko, economic intelligence. So we need those things to monitor the budget, and these people's role will be to see that if, for example, oil price is not as provided for in the budget, what do we do? So we expect to see a lot of what-if scenarios. It is the role of these people to do what-if scenarios. So we don't wait until that thing happens before we begin to react.
Right. Thank you very much for your time and your expert advice on issues of budget. Thank you so much for coming on Dateline Abuja.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your emails as always. I'll take this one from Gani Lawal, who shared his views on our interview last week. He says, Cost-cutting measure is not a one-line institutional job. It's a multi-dimensional and multidisciplinary business that is constantly fed with current market data. What is being done abroad is a fixed rate for government procurement prices. Only suppliers who can match the rate applies to supply. It checkmates again, he says, the regime of emergency suppliers and inflated contract sums. Well, Gani Lawal reacting to the federal government's plan to cut costs through the newly established efficiency unit in the Ministry of Finance. Well, keep your comments coming and using the address Twitter handle on your screen. Don't you forget, you can view the program on youtube.com/channelsweb/videos. Make your comments after viewing all the videos. And of course, when you're writing, please include your name and location. Thank you for watching this week. I'm Gloria Umezuke, and compliments of the season.